in fact, for about 20 years, I ran Congress for Progress. I was one of a team of people that ran Congress for Progress. Mark Schaefer was on the committee. We were the first and longest running regional conference in all of Apics. 3-day conference, speakers, we had an exhibit floor, a whole bunch of things. And one of the things that I got involved in was when speakers would speak. And most speakers said, put me any place you want except right after lunch. What do you think that? Why is right after lunch a place most speakers don't want to speak in?
You're keeping everybody awake.
Yeah, you got to keep them awake. You see, I'm in a fight right now with your physiology.
You're going to lose.
No, I'm not. I haven't lost yet. Your body just absorbed maybe a glass of wine or some beer, a nice dinner, and hopefully a nice dessert. Guess what happens to your blood in your body? Yeah, exactly. It stops going to the head and starts going to the stomach to digest all of that nice fuel that you just put in your body. Well, guess what? When it comes from the brain and goes to your gut, what do you want to do? I want to take a nap. Yeah. So my job, actually, for about the first 5 minutes, is to get you moving. So that you'll stay awake for the rest of the presentation. Not quite, Gary. No less. All right. Now, topic tonight is change. As human beings, we have a built-in psychological aversion to change. We hate to change. I don't care whether it is the clothes you wear, the job you're doing, whatever. We would rather suffer than change. It's hardwired into us. Why? Because change is fearful. Change means uncertainty. Change could possibly mean danger. There is only one time in our lives, and this has happened to every single one of us. There is only one time in our lives when we not only like change, but we demand change. Anybody care to speculate what point in our lives that is?
When I had a diaper.
Art hit the nail on the head. When we're a newborn and we have a dirty diaper, we want that diaper changed. We not only want it changed, we demand that it be changed. And biology gave us this nice set of lungs that make sure that mom or dad or whoever's taking care of us will not shirk their duty and help us change. Unfortunately, as we mature, we lose that desire for change. So, now, we're going to, if I can hit the right button, do a little test. Everybody stand up. I told you I was going to get you up. I want you to pair off. Each person has to have somebody else look right at them, stand up, look right at them. Pick a pair.
You're not playing in this game?
Dog, he's examining. We're having
Are you
fun.
out, man, out? You're with me. Oh, yeah, come on, come on. All right. I want you to look at your partner, study their appearance. Go ahead. Now, I want you, each person, to do a complete 180, have your back to your partner. While you're in that position, I want you to change one thing about your physical appearance that will make you more comfortable.
Okay.
Everybody understand? Go ahead and do it. One thing that will make you more comfortable. All right, everybody there? Turn around, face your partner. See if you can figure out what they changed.
Roll up your sleeves.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright. This is the hardest part of this presentation. Get everybody back on track.
Exactly, yeah.
Alright.
Get him under control.
Isn't that interesting? I shut up and everybody comes to life. I gotta learn that. Alright, face your partner again. Again, 180 degrees, turn away from your partner. Change another thing that will make you more comfortable. One more thing that will make you more comfortable about your physical appearance.
Can't take anything more off. I don't have any scissors to make
I know,
shorts.
the second time is tough.
I thought it was the third time.
All right, turn around. Everybody sit down. Have a seat. By a show of hands, how many of you, one or both of the things that you changed when you sat down, you put them back the way they were when we started this? Show of hands.
No.
Yeah. See, that's the thing about change. When it's imposed on you, which is what I did, our natural response is to resist it. Now, I specifically asked you to change one thing that would make you more comfortable. By definition, you pick something that would make you more comfortable. What did I change about my appearance? Jacket and tie, you know?
Business casual.
Believe me. I never wear suits any longer except when I'm doing this presentation. Especially ties. Oh, yeah.
Because you need something to take off?
That's why. That's exactly why. Is my coat and tie back on? Yeah. See, I wanted that change. For those of you that put your hands up, the change was imposed on you, even though it made you more comfortable. This is where we're going tonight. when we're trying to change an organization, we have to do three things. We have to understand what the problem is we're trying to change. Then, because it's an organization of many people, and in any organization that has more than one person, you have skeptics at any change that you want to implement. So the next thing you have to do is you have to turn those skeptics, your harshest skeptics, into your cheerleaders. But that's not the end of the story. Once you start making changes, people will go back to the old way of doing things. Even if the old way of doing things is harder, takes longer, costs more money, is a royal pain in the butt, but it's what I know and love. So now you have to figure out a way to make change stick. Now, let me tell you a little story. I build myself as a change master. Something I came up with after one old granddad too many one night when I was just starting my business about 20 years ago. But it stuck with me because it's what I do. I help, yeah, old granddad stays with me. I help organizations change. Doesn't mean that I'm any different than anyone else in this room. I resist change also. For a number of years, my wife works about 18 miles from our house. And at one period in my career, before she started working after our last child was born, I used to go the same route as she went. The shortest mileage, 18 miles. It's the way that I went from East Windsor, where I live, to West Trenton, where she works. It was autopilot. I get in the car, I had to go over to Karen's office. I went this way. Shortest route, mileage. She started working there. She had to do the same route. She had to deal with traffic all the time. She found a route that was longer, and she swore this is a better route. For 20 years, anytime I had to go to Karen's office, I never took her way. Forget about that. It doesn't happen. My way is best. I don't care if she saves time. She couldn't possibly save time. I'm going the shortest route. Then, in a situation that she had a medical issue that prevented her from driving for about 15 years. So I started having to take her to work. The first week that I took her to work, I went my way. It took 45 minutes to do 18 miles. It's like, by the end of that first week, I'm thinking, there's got to be a better way. Not saying anything to her. And guys, you'll understand this, and ladies, no offense, but us guys never listen to our wives. The second week, without telling her, I tried the way that she told me. Because it's like, I can't spend 45 minutes doing 18 miles. I got to go to work too. Wouldn't you know it? In traffic, going further, did it in 25 minutes. I use that route all the time now. Why did I change? Because it wasn't my wife's idea, it was mine.
It was probably more
Yeah, I know. It was her idea, but when I finally had to suffer the rush hour traffic, it became my idea. I bought into her concept.
And she didn't rub it in?
She hasn't let me forget it. I love my wife dearly. We're coming up on our 45th anniversary. We are waiting for our 11th grandchild to be born in July. But no, she never lets me forget it, and that's fine, because I earned that. So now I'm going to put you to work again. Each person take one.
Paperwork.
Paperwork. Grab your pens, pencils. There you go. If you need another copy, if I'm short one, let me know.
This is good.
There you go, Gary.
This is change right guy.
All right.
You showed up.
Now, let me set the stage here. You're all process owners. Because unless you're like me, where my office is literally 13 feet from my bedroom door, you have a commute. Each one of you individually, I want you to answer these questions. How many miles do you commute one way? How long does it take? How many traffic lights do you pass through? What causes delays on the commute? Do that first. And if you're like me, you're lucky.
NA. Before this assignment, I was driving 45 to an hour a day. And over a 15-year career, I calculated that I spent 2 years in the car. Basically, 2 years in the car driving.
Yep.
And I like it much better the way it is.
Oh, yeah. All right. When you've got the answers to that, I want you to have a discussion at each of your tables and figure out who has the worst commute at your table. What's your worst commute?
It's over here. It's a 51 mile
Ooh.
one miles.
Oh. What makes it worse? Mileage?
It could be the traffic.
Okay. Worst commute?
It's 30 miles, hour or more.
Okay. Worst commute?
They're all saying it's me, but I only go 16 miles, but it's like a 40-minute commute. I don't
What was the other one that was tied for it?
It was a 40-mile commute, 60 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Worst commute this table?
Worst commute was, well, 13 miles, 30 minutes.
Okay. Worst commute this table?
They told me it's me by 20 miles, and it took, depending on traffic at the tolls, 35 minutes to an hour.
Nice variable.
Yeah, it was great. If
So
there
you
wasn't,
either get to work on time, half an hour late, or half an hour early.
yeah, kind of like that.
All right. Now, what I had you do in this exercise is the first part of Goldrat's thinking process. You saw on the slide that besides being a CPIM, I'm a Jonah. Jonah is a program that Ellie Goldrat, the creator of Theory of Constraints, came up with. It's basically how to analyze complex organizational issues using a scientific method. We used part of that method at your tables over the past 10 minutes as you were trying to figure out who had the worst commute. I did this with a client of mine, recording for the blind and dyslexic in Princeton, New Jersey, a few years ago. Let me give you a little background on RFD&D. They are a nonprofit volunteer organization. They have a paid staff of about 150 people. They have 30 independent recording studios spread around the continental United States. What they do is take textbooks that students need and record them for the students who are either visually impaired or perceptually impaired. ergo blind and dyslexic. They've been doing this since 1948. They use 5,000 volunteers, people like you and me. In fact, for a while, I was one of their volunteers, along with being their consultant, to come into the studio and record certain sections of books. Think when you were in school, a biology book, or a mathematics book. My favorite book that they recorded was for an art appreciation course. It was a big portfolio book, had absolutely no words in it. But they had an artist describe the pictures for the students. RFB&D and I go back a long way. They happened to be in my chapter. At that time it was the Princeton-Trenton chapter of Apex, right south of you guys. And RFB&D was a big supporter of Apex. John Churchill happened to be the driving force there in manufacturing because they manufactured a product. Not only did they record it, but then they had to take those recordings and they had to put them onto a variety of different media. If you went back to 1948, the media that it was recorded in was a wax cylinder. Think of a GI coming home from World War II who had been blinded. Yet we had the GI Bill, and that student got a free boat to college because of his service. Now he needed a way to be able to read the books. So this started in New York City with a woman trying to help these disabled vets, and to this day. So they record these books on masters, and then they have to be put on, at that time, cassette tapes, so that they could be sent to the students. Now, the students used to be college students, but when they included dyslexia, now they go from preschool all the way to postgraduate literature. They record that widest spectrum. And in fact, our biggest growth area is preschool through high school. That's where most of their members are now. What I walked you through, having you figure out who had the worst commute, was exactly the same process that RFB&D engaged me to take their company through. Because you see, they had this problem. In a good year, in those 30 studios with 5,000 volunteers, they could record about 4,400 textbooks. And as soon as they included dyslexia, people with dyslexia, their customer base exploded. They couldn't keep up with demand. So they engaged me to come in and analyze their manufacturing process and what did they need. And it was no holds barred. What do we need to be able to increase our production capability? It started out with a meeting of the sponsors. The sponsors were John Churchill, the VP of Manufacturing, Peter Baran, the VP of IT, and his name just escapes me, but the Chief Operating Officer. We had a meeting where they said what the issue was. The issue was they needed to increase their capacity. They needed to increase their output of books because they were getting hammered. They couldn't keep up with demand. They set the scope of the project. The scope of the project was we were talking about the studios and headquarters. We weren't looking at finance. We weren't looking at sales. We weren't looking at IT. We weren't looking anything else. We were looking at manufacturing in the studios. In the exercise that I just had you do, I was the sponsor. I set the bounds. Your drive to work. I gave you a list of questions there, okay? I set the parameters for this whole thing. That's what they did. Once we had the project scope nailed down, then we went to who are the process owners. Now, I told you there were 30 studios. Each studio had 3 professional staff. The 2 that I was really concerned with were the production manager and the studio director. We had 30 studios. I needed to get a representative sampling of studio directors and production managers. I couldn't go out and interview 30 studios. I would have spent a year and a half doing that. So, what Gary Landy, the RFB&D project manager, and I did was we selected 4 studios that represented the different types of studios in the RFB&D manufacturing. Small studio, low volume, small studio, high volume, a lot of technology, big studio, high volume, low technology. There were a whole bunch of criteria. And in this one summer, a few years ago, Gary Landy and I spent July and August on a road trip. Houston, Texas, Charlottesville, Virginia, Boston, Massachusetts, and fortunately Princeton, New Jersey, where there was a studio. We went and would spend a whole day with the production manager and studio director and the head of the studio that was there, if they were there, but our focus was those 2 actual people. And what we would do, we would talk to those process owners. Now I sit down a little cassette tape recorder and I filled a couple notebooks full of notes that I made. And I asked each studio director and production manager these 3 questions. How's the current process work? Now these, you would expect each studio to be using the same process. Not a chance. What are the bad things that happen in the current process? How does the current process cause these problems? And there was no hold barred. It was stuff that they were doing, it was stuff that headquarters was doing. From that, and we spent about 6 weeks doing that, I came back, went back to my office, and, you know, where's Gary? My office 13 feet from my bedroom door, and spent 2 weeks there putting together a process map and a narrative that described the RFB&D process for recording a book. All its warts and wrinkles. You'll get a laugh about this one. They had 3 major IT systems that didn't talk to each other. And they had 12 Excel spreadsheets, which not only didn't talk to each other, but didn't talk to the 3 major systems. This was only part of the problem. What I did was I put together a process map. It's a big graphic. If you're familiar with engineering drawings, it's an E-size drawing, the biggest one you can get. Plus a 30-page narrative that talked about each and every step that I had heard from each and every studio. Then we brought, 4 times 3 is 12. We brought 18 people into Princeton for a one-day review, current process state validation. The whole purpose of that was, did we get it right? Is this the problems that we are experiencing? Is this how the process works right now? Well, go back to the exercise that I just had you do. You're all the process owners. You all have to commute every day, whether it's by bus, by train, by car. We're all process owners. We know what goes on in our daily commute. It's the same thing I did with the studio directors and production managers. You're shaking your head no.
No, you forgot one very important person,
Who?
the engineer. The engineer who actually did the recordings.
It's not an engineer that does the recording, it's the volunteers. Volunteers sit in the sound booth. Let me give you an idea.
The person who actually runs the controls.
Hang on. coming to that. Picture a sound booth, big enough for you to sit down in, with your headphones on and the book. And there's a glass in between you and the other volunteer who's on the outside running the controls, and also with their book following along with you to make sure you're doing a great job. 2 people to record one session. They'd be lucky if they got 20 or 30 pages done in a 300-page book. We didn't do the volunteers because they weren't part of the issue we were dealing with. The issue we were dealing with was not how they recorded, okay? It was how we scheduled production, okay?
I would say it's because they didn't have professionals in the chair.
Well, just stay with me. The rest of the, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story is coming. We brought them in for a day. They sat there and picked this thing apart. They didn't pick it apart too bad, but at the end of that day, the process owners said, this is what happens, this is the bad things that happen, and we'll hang our hat on this. It's the way it is. That's how we got the problem defined. It was not only a computer problem, it was a procedural problem. Things like how you record a book with multiple people at the same time. They had no way to do that. You couldn't be recording chapter 1 while you were recording chapter 2. It had to be sequential. You couldn't do it in tandem to get the book recorded faster. There was no way to do that, except at headquarters. Another part of the problem. All right, so that's how you figure out what the problem is. Now I'm going to put you back to work again. Now that we know who's got the worst commute at each table, and this table here, I'm going to charge you with doing both of them. I want the process owners to come up with solutions to make that commute better. Everything is on the table. There is no limits. You can do anything. Go ahead. You guys got a solution?
You can't read
Alright, listen up. Listen up. Listen up. No.
That's perfect.
Hello. Alright. Now, there's one statement that has always stuck in my mind from the 2-week compressed MBA course I took getting my Jonah certification. And that statement is, when pigs fly, this'll work. So, you've all come up with some suggestions of solutions. What you need to do is look at those solutions and figure out, are they only applicable when pigs fly? And if they are, what do you need to change to make them workable in the real world? Go ahead and spend a couple minutes on that.
Back to my comment.
Well, it has to be a whole organization, culture change of work to do either of them. It won't speed it up. You could still read earlier and just to work and read paper and
makes a world of difference.
Yeah, make her Okay, so you've been changing, you've had to deal with two changes.
It's easier on my voice. All right. So, what you finally wind up with at this table?
A change in the schedule and the habit structure. I'm going to take a longer lunch and a siesta. It was this drive home after Russia.
There's evidence that the longer lunch and siesta is actually good for you.
Yeah.
How about this table, Michael? What was your support?
Same thing, except we're talking more about the morning. Leave earlier in the morning
Okay.
to avoid the traffic.
All right. Now, this table had two. First up here.
Well, basically similar items, flex hours, so leaving earlier or changing your time. Books on tape was the other suggestion, which actually I already do. And, yeah, that's really it. Carpooling was another thought.
You know-
We kind of thought that was the greatest idea.
I hate to say it, but I use books on tape as an analogy also. And that just means we're showing our age because no cars have tape players.
So there was some overlap. Flex time and telecommuting are
Okay. How about this table here? What'd you come up with?
No clear answer. We mentioned several of the others. Change of hours, telecommuting, or moving.
Okay. Some of them may not be viable though. Some of them may only have it when pigs fly. Last table, what'd you come up with?
It was suggested that I get a particular app that really was good at gauging any kind of traffic issues and things like that. I know that at one of the two jobs that I had at the same location, I shifted and I worked a section late so that I could leave after the,
Okay. Now,
but you can't always do that.
I know, sometimes it'll only happen when pigs fly. And that's not a realistic solution. So let's flip back to recording for the blind and dyslexic. And talk about how we turn skeptics into our biggest cheerleaders. And it was part of the process you just did. See, one of the things I didn't tell you about the interviews that Gary and I did with the 4 recording studios. The first 3 questions, how's the current process work, what bad things happen, how does the process cause them to happen? That discussion happened usually from 9 until noontime in the morning. Now, if I flew all the way to Austin, Texas, I wasn't packing my bag and leaving at noontime to come back to New Jersey. Flights don't work that way. I have to spend the night. So we'd go out to lunch, or they'd order lunch in. And when we came back from lunch, I got them all settled down. And then I took out my magic pen. And I said, this is my magic wand. I'm going to wave it, and all those problems you talked about this morning are gone. What does the new system, what does the new process look like that would allow all those problems to be gone? Basically what I had you doing when I said, okay, find some solutions to the longest commute. We spent the afternoon. Again, I'd be recording it, taking suggestions from the process owners. These are the people that have to work with the issue every single day of their working lives, and even when they go home, because the one thing I know about RFB&D, the paid staff there, they are just so super focused on making sure that kid or that college student gets the book they need so that they can continue on with their education. I mean, their job is not a 9-to-5 job. It doesn't stop when they leave the office. They're always trying to figure out a way to make sure that kid gets the book they need at the time they need so they can be successful. From that part of the interview, again, when we went back to New Jersey, after we got the current state process map validated, I spent about a month taking their suggestions, looking at best in class in other industries for some of the processes and procedures that we were doing. And this is where the engineering portion came into play. And I created another process map, a future state process map, which detailed one ERP system. Everybody was connected to it. No more 3 systems, no more 12 data Excel files that didn't talk to each other. New ways of doing things based on some best in class in other disciplines. This was another E-size drawing. The narrative that went along with it was over 100 pages. One of the things that I made sure of was every single interview that I did, every single person that came up with any suggestion, I made sure at least one of their suggestions got into this new future state process map. Now, I didn't tell them who's got it, you know, who's got in, who's didn't, because these were intelligent people. They could figure out, oh, you know, he actually listened to me. I can see it right there. Now, again, this time, 2-day review of the future state, because this one we knew was going to take a long time, but in addition to the 16 to 18 people we had for the current state process review, we added 6 more people. The 6 people we added were the harshest critics in the RFB&D professional staff. These are the people that at the studios, when they heard that headquarters was coming with a new project, they lock the doors, turn off the phones, and say, you're not coming in here. We don't want to hear anything from headquarters. We picked half a dozen of the studio directors and production managers who were vocal critics, were also doing some really good things at their own individual studios. And the third criterion, which was the most important, they had a lot of street credibility with the rest of the studio directors and production managers, because it's a tight-knit network. We knew that if we could get these 6 people to buy into this future state, our battle won. Brought them in also. 2 days. A lot of questions. A lot of, how's it going to work? I don't see this. A lot of, oh, okay. At the end of that 2 days, the original process owners that we had, plus those 6 additional critics, the 6 additional critics became our biggest cheerleaders. They saw it was going to work. And they came out of that meeting saying, when are we going to choose a software package? When can we start changing these things? I've been saying we need to do this for years. I heard that a couple times. A lot of times when we're trying to do a change in an organization, We know who the harshest critic is, and we don't want that person to be anywhere near us when we're trying to figure out what we got to do. You can't exclude them. If you exclude them, guess what? They're still your harshest critic. And they're going to take pot shots at you all the way through the process. So now, we took those skeptics, showed them a way to move into the future that they could buy into. Now this project, I've been using Goldrad's thinking process this entire way. It's a 6-step process. We're not going through all 6 steps tonight. But one of the things that makes it work is that all along this path, which took about 5 months, I kept having weekly meetings with the sponsors. Vernon Bramble, I finally remembered his name, the Chief Operating Officer, John and Peter, to let them know what the team was doing, what conclusions they were coming through, suggestions that they were going to make. There were no surprises when we got to the end. And I did a presentation for the entire executive team of RFB&D, which was about 15 people, about what the team was recommending. At the end of that meeting, senior leadership literally signed off on it and said, let's start finding some software to make this happen. And let's start putting in these process changes. We got to that point, but you all know, these are all words so far. Yeah, we got the skeptics. Yeah, we got the process owners. Yes, we have the sponsors all on our page. If you counted the number of people we had on our page and looked at the 150 people in RFB&D, we had maybe 30 people on our side. That meant we still had 120 to go. The way that we made this thing work was, first of all, those people that we interviewed in the initial run-up that summer, and our skeptics. They have a yearly studio directors conference in Princeton where they bring everybody in from all over the country. I didn't make the presentation. Gary Landy didn't make the presentation. Vernon Bramble, John Churchill, Peter Baran, not even on the stage. We had the entire review team up there talking to their peers about what the problem is, what the solution they came up with is, and how it's going to work. The fact that the solution was going to solve all of these problems that all of these studio directors and production managers had been living with for a number of years. That this new solution, which was software and process changes, wasn't going to create a whole raft of other issues that we now had to deal with. You know, the object is make our life simpler so that we can do more, so that we can provide more books. They also were very upfront with the obstacles we were going to have to making this change. First big obstacle, we were talking about an ERP system that had to be able to handle 30 sites simultaneously, plus headquarters, and that's a lot of money for a nonprofit organization. We actually went through an entire ERP selection process, and thanks to a guy named Bill Gates, we got an entire ERP package for nothing. The next thing we did, as we started the implementation, we set goals. Our main goal was, we're going to have this implementation done, start to finish, in 1 year, and ERP implementation, 30 independent studios. We had measurements, we had, Gary Landy was a great project manager on this. He was ruthless about making things happen. And we had a big implementation team. You know those studio directors that we interviewed? You know those skeptics that we brought in for the final review? That was our implementation team. These people were driven. They saw what needed to be done. They saw how it was going to benefit them. They hit every one of their performance measurements. End of the story here. Remember I told you at the start of this process that RFB&D could do about 4,400 books a year? 2 years later, RFB&D brought me back in for another project. This one was how to get the sales process, selling enough product to keep up with our capacity. Since without bringing any more paid staff on, without bringing any more volunteers on, and in fact closing 2 underperforming studios, our current capacity was 8,200 books a year, and sales was only selling 6,000 books a year. We did a whole other project to get sales and marketing aligned with manufacturing so that we could turn out books cheaper, better, and faster. And oh, by the way, technology came along in the interim, and we were looking at being able to take a book, 1,000-page textbook, and do what we did early on before we even started this project. Any of you Harry Potter fans? Go ahead, you can admit it.
Harry Potter.
Big book with young children. RFB&D, I forget which Harry Potter book it was. It came out at 12:01 a.m. on a Saturday morning. They had a person at the Princeton Barnes & Noble picking up 30 copies of it. They took it to the Princeton studio. They had what they called a recording marathon. Took the entire book, recorded it, formatted it, and had it ready for shipment Monday morning.
Wow.
We took that same process and turned it on to where RFB&D can pretty much do an on-demand book. You come in with a book, all you have to do is, if we don't have it in our studio already, and it's one that we can record, send us 2 copies of it. We'll have it to you, maybe not the entire thing all at once, but as the course is progressing, we'll be at least 1 chapter ahead of you all the way. To sum it up, we had to determine what the problem was. We had to take our skeptics and make them our cheerleaders. And then we had to find a way to make this stick. In summary, where we got to was understand the problem, process owners define the solution. And then to make it stick, it's got to be started and ended and all the way in the middle. It's got to be the people. You got to have a set of goals of where you're going to go, and you got to have the measurements to get there. Why change? Here's the real bottom line. Change or die. We've all experienced it in our careers. I've noticed a lot of gray hair in this room, me included. And in my career, I have seen manufacturing decline in this state dramatically. Yet, I've had my own business for 20 years. Why? Because I changed. I embraced other things. We have to change. It's a fact of life. Not only for business. Thank you all very much. Have a good night.